Good evening, everybody. How are you this evening? Thank you very much for being here for this webinar, which I'm going to deliver. It'll last about an hour, maybe a little bit less, but just about an hour. And we're going to give you some really good data to help you with the subject of self-esteem. I want to welcome everybody who has joined us on Facebook and on YouTube and on Instagram. So for all of you on those platforms, thank you so much for your time tonight. If you want to contribute in any way to the webinar, if you want to give examples, because it's a webinar after all, not just a lecture, and I will be asking for examples, you can put your comments in on those platforms, and I've got somebody keeping an eye on them so they'll come directly around to me and on the Zoom platform, and I've got everybody here on Zoom in front of me. So thank you all very much, everybody on Zoom tonight, for joining me. So thank you to Paul. Who else have we got there? Mary, Anne-Marie, Shane, Dermot, Sonia, Cynthia, Caroline, Geraldine, Walter, Naranchimeg, I am so sorry if I pronounced that wrongly, Clara and Otis. Thank you all very much for your time. And to introduce this particular webinar, this is the free introductory webinar to a 4-part online course that I deliver on a Friday night from 8 o'clock until 9 o'clock. And the webinar is based entirely from this book, Dianetics, which means Through the Mind. So this is where I'm getting the material from, and this is what I have been studying and lecturing on and helping people on a one-to-one basis with for over 25 years. And I've stuck with this subject because it works, and for no other reason. Just that it works, it makes sense, and I hope that what I give you tonight will make sense to you too. Now, so what I'd like to do to start off with, for everybody on the platforms, I would love to know where you're from. I like to know where people are from, so if you wouldn't mind, this is your first exercise on the webinar. You see, you thought you were just going to be listening to me, but I would really like it if you could just pop into the chat where you're from, what country you're from, or what city you're from, or what, if you're in Ireland, what county you're from. Okay, so if you wouldn't mind, if you're on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, put those places into the comments and put them into the chat here on Zoom. I just like to see where everybody is from, because sometimes I've got people from Africa, sometimes I've got people from Canada, and sometimes just people from Ireland, sometimes people from England, Scotland, Wales, all over the world, so it depends. Okay, so Geraldine from Clare. Hi, Geraldine. Love Clare. Absolutely love it down there. Charles, Wicklow. Wonderful, Charles. I got married down there near Clara Vale in Wicklow. Shane, the Midlands. Good stuff. I love them. I'm from Southeast Kildare. Thank you, Shane. Great stuff. Love the Midlands. Up the Midlands. Ireland, yeah. Cynthia, Dublin. Good stuff, Cynthia. Love Dublin as well. I've been living here since the 90s, so I wouldn't have stayed here if I didn't love it, and I love it. Sonia's from Betty Hill, north coast of Scotland. Wonderful, Sonia. Wonderful. Great stuff. Camille's from Dublin. Thank you, Camille, for joining us. Naran Chimeng from Mongolia. Wow, great. Well, very welcome to the webinar tonight from all the way from Mongolia. Okay, great. Tricia's from County Clare. Wonderful, Tricia. Thank you for joining us. I love the Burren down there. I love driving through the Burren. I love all that area. Gorgeous. Caroline, Kildare. You know I love Kildare, Caroline. Dermot from Dublin. Wonderful, Dermot. Okay, folks, thank you so much for joining us. And for everybody else who's joined there as well. I've got, if anybody has any personal questions that they want to ask or want to hook up with the host, there's a gentleman on the webinar tonight called Igars, and he'll be there to answer any of your questions that you have that you want to kind of keep direct. Whereas if you want to ask me a question or if you want to put any comments, just pop them straight into the chat. I'm going to be looking at every single section, every single comment as we're going along. Okay, so we're going to start off with what the definition of self-esteem is. Okay, so we've got this word. Okay, now this word in school, I did 3 years of Latin, I actually loved it, and this word comes from the Latin word, this is Latin, it's an old Italian language, A-E-S-T-I-M-A-R-E, I think that I spell that right, A-E-S-T-I, yes. It basically means to judge the worth of. That's basically where that word esteem comes from. A Latin estimare, which means to judge the worth of, or the value of. So, then, what do you think self-esteem means? Exactly. What is your concept of your worth? What is your concept of your value? Are you running yourself down all the time? Are you making yourself smaller than you actually are? Okay, so this is self-esteem. Or is it going the other way? Do you have a good viewpoint of your ability, a good viewpoint of your potential? Now, essentially, when we're talking about self-esteem in terms of life, we're talking about really, it boils down to two basic statements. And obviously, everybody has a goal. You're obviously doing something in life, even if it's just a goal for the day or a goal for the week or your lifetime. And self-esteem comes down to I can do it, or I can't, or I'm not sure. So one of the basic ingredients of lack of self-esteem is this thing on uncertainty. Not being sure. I don't really know if I can do it. I don't think I'm good enough. I think they're a lot better than I am. I think that I'll leave it until next week because I'm not ready. I'm never going to be ready. They're much more ready than I am. All these kind of negative comments, which really come down to this, is I can't do it. I can't get that relationship. I can't open that business. I don't trust myself. I don't think I'm good enough. I don't think I'm as good as they are. I let them go for those opportunities because I wouldn't be able to do that. As opposed to this one, which is, I can do it, or I can learn how to do it. So those are the two basic statements on self-esteem, and kind of what it boils down to in terms of life. So for example, if you want to go for a new job, you can have this idea, well, you know what? I can actually get this job. I'm worth it. I'm as good as anybody else, and I can do a better job than anybody else. I can do just as good as anybody, even better. Or you can go in with this attitude of, well, you know what? There's probably going to be other people that are better than I am. I let them. I probably won't get the job anyway because, I'm not very good. I'm very shy, or I'm not very positive, or I'm not very confident. Okay. Now you will find that there are some areas of your life where you do have this attitude of I can. So you may work, for example, as a salesperson, and you could be very, very good at your job in sales. And so your idea of your worth is kind of high in that area. Or you might be very, very good with your family. So you know how to handle your children and your partner and your family, and you're actually very, very good in that area, and your idea of yourself is very good. But then you might have another area where you're not good. So you could be really good in a job, but then in relationships, you might be very doubtful of yourself. You might be running yourself down, whether it's your looks, whether it's your age, whether it's your general ability, your confidence, your happiness, your enthusiasm. You could be running yourself down. So, as I mentioned, this is a webinar, and the first little exercise I have for you tonight is I would like you to answer this question. What area of your life does lack of self-esteem affect you the most? What is the area of your life that lack of self-esteem affects you the most? Now, if you don't want to share that, you don't have to, but I would really appreciate it if you wouldn't mind popping it into the comments section. If you can, that would be great. And for anybody on the other platforms, just put it into the comments section. So just the question is for you. What part of your life does lack of self-esteem affect you? And if you're on this webinar just to help somebody else, you can tell me what part of their life does the lack of self-esteem affect them. Is it health? Is it fitness? Is it relationships? Is it work? Is it family? What is the area of life? What is the specific area where lack of self-esteem affects you? So if you wouldn't mind, pop those into the comments section there. Okay, and Walter, you're from Croatia. Istra Peninsula, thank you. Amiva, hi Amiva. Communication, yeah, very, very good. When you are doubting yourself, you're going to be doubting what you should say. It's a very, very good example, Amita. And then you won't communicate, or you just keep it in. And you might have really, really, really good ideas, but you just don't say it. Or you're in a group and you just don't want to say the things that you think are valuable. So that's really good. Thank you very much. What else do we have? Keep the comments coming in, people. That'd be great. Let's see. Amoeba communication. Sign yourself at an interview. Don't like to sound boastful. Okay. I don't know whether you're saying that you doubt yourself going into an interview or you're confident going into an interview. But the interview scenario is a very good example of where you can apply both of these, either one of these situations. Okay. Cynthia, work. Yeah, exactly. Very good. Dermot, relationships. Yeah, you are. You want to get into a relationship, but you keep putting it off, or you don't think that they're going to say yes, or you're doubting your looks or your attitude or your character. You might not think you're as funny as somebody else. So it's a very good one example, Dermot. Thank you. Caroline, personal relationships. Exactly. Amiva, social interactions. Yes, especially word ones. Thank you. Otis, lack of self-esteem comes from me as a whole. I do not have that belief or trust in myself, which leads to withdrawing from others, isolated and further knocking and limiting myself, which is no way to live. Yeah, again, that's the same one. Similar communication, Otis, where instead of communicating it and just feeling satisfied that is your communication and that's what you wanted to say. And instead of doing that, you kind of hold it in. So very good. Charles, relationships. Thank you very much, Charles. Tricia, applying for jobs so I don't tick all the boxes. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Tricia. We'll cover this in a few minutes, a little bit more about that. Okay. Relationships and always doubting myself. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Yeah. Again, this relationships area is a very... it kind of comes out very clearly in this area because it's the kind of area where the person that you are getting involved with really is going to find out what you really like. And you're kind of exposing yourself to who you really are when you're getting into a relationship. Whereas you might be able to kind of pretend it maybe in work or in a social situation. Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. Doing really well. Walter, I was all the kind of time in doubt once again my integrity, but I could only put all these factors together because my statistics was good. Okay, so you're doing very well, but you're still doubting yourself. Thank you, Walter. Self-esteem has been going on for some time. Otis, rather than focusing on the good things, I focus on the negative. You don't see the true beauty. It's either hidden, covered, or misguided from what lies beneath. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Otis. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. Now, let's have a look at a couple of the sources of these. Now, I'm going to go over three major things. The first two are things that I'm just going to very briefly cover, and then I'm going to get into the main thing which ruins your self-esteem. Now, I'm not talking from somebody who doesn't have a track on this. When I grew up in the countryside, down the country in Kildare, in the farming area, and I had a nice family and we all got on pretty well. We had our ups and downs and so forth, but we did get on very well, good parents and good life. But when I moved to college in Dublin in the 90s, I really did feel that lack of self-esteem, that lack of, confidence and so forth. It did kick in. But I very soon, once I came across this subject, I learned some really, really key things that have just built it up and up and up. And I'm going to go touch on two of them and delve into one of them in more depth here. Okay? Now, again, when we're going through these couple of points, anything... If you want to give an example, you can. But normally at the end of each section, I'll ask you for an example, okay? Now, the first one I want to go over very briefly is this. This is number one. And these first two things are external things that can affect your self-esteem, okay? And you are probably aware of this. So there you are, and you have a goal. And that goal could be anything. Maybe you want to open up your own business. Maybe that's your goal. You want to open up your own business. Okay? Perfect. Now, you have a best friend who keeps reminding you that you're too old. Now, apparently it's done out of friendliness, and I'm not saying all these people are bad, by the way, so don't go around, okay, hey, Vincent said you were bad, so therefore I'm putting you out of my life. I'm not going to say that. You can have somebody who is directly, there's a nice little word here, engaging in this thing called suppression. And suppression basically means to push down. So, when you are trying to achieve your goals in life, you are going to run into this opposition thing. Some people who are very direct about telling you how worthless you are, or how bad you are, or how no good you are, and if you do this, I'm never going to talk to you again type of situation. So it's very direct suppression. And the second is indirect suppression, where somebody kind of gives you these little comments of, oh, are you sure you're not old? Are you sure you're not too old? Are you sure you're the right size for the modelling job? Are you sure that you're educated enough? Or you're going for that job as a manager. And tell me, what kind of a degree did you get? You know, kind of subtle little comments that come in and undermine your belief in yourself. Whereas at the beginning, you are on this goal. You say, you know what? That's it. I'm going to go and I'm going to open up my own business. I've done the research. I know it's going to work. And after your experience with such a person putting you down, the end result is doubt. This is the biggest effect. Now you don't know if you should. You don't know if you should do it, or maybe you shouldn't do it. Maybe you should leave it till next year. Maybe somebody else will be better. You know what? He's right. I'm going to stick with what I'm doing for the rest of my life. You know, I'm going to stay at home. I'm going to do nothing. So, in this type of situation, this is an external situation, there are two things I want you to remember here. Number one is to be aware of it. You deserve to be treated with respect. If somebody doesn't agree with your goals, it's completely fine. Somebody can express their disagreement and explain, okay, look, I'm just trying to help you out here. Here is the situation. Sometimes it could be logical, but quite often it can be directed in order to undermine your decision. You made that decision, and you have a right to go for it. Obviously, you have to have the correct data, and you have to have the correct approach, and people can help you with that. So you're looking for people who can help you, not push you down. So the first thing you do is you just be aware of it. Be aware of the comments that people are making to you in your environment. And ask yourself, was that a helpful comment? Or was it a destructive comment? Just be aware of it. Now, if you have somebody that you know that's constantly giving you this, nya, 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 you have an absolute right to go up to the person and say, over a nice cup of tea, can we have a chat? I really want to talk about something. You know, when you make those comments about me being this and that and the other, it doesn't make me feel good. So can we kind of change that around? And you know what? In most cases, that will handle the situation. So the very basic handling for this is, and look, there's a whole webinar that I could do on this particular topic alone, but the basic message is to be aware of it and to approach somebody who is putting you down and actually communicate with them about it so that it stops. Because if it continues, what happens is you are going to continuously doubt yourself on decisions, and your self-esteem is going to just keep going down, and you'll have times when it goes up and then it goes back down again. You think you're worthless again, and then you think you're great again. You know what? A new lease of life, and then you go back down again. So that's the first thing. Keep an eye on it. I don't want to go into it any more than that. It's an external factor. So just suppression from others, and you do have a right to be treated with respect, with courtesy, and with politeness. Okay? So that's the first thing. Now, number two is that can have a major effect on your self-esteem and your concept of how much you value yourself is this thing. This is number two, and it's competence. Okay? So, you can have a situation where you have, let's say, somebody who's a salesperson, and he's not really sure what he's doing. He's not really practiced at what he's doing. He doesn't know how to do his job. really. He's got a lot of uncertainties about his job. So that would be incompetence. Okay? Somebody who doesn't really know their job. And when you don't know what you're doing, if you're working in a job but you're not really trained in it, you don't really know what you're doing, it's going to affect your opinion of yourself. Okay? The opposite of that is somebody who absolutely knows what they're doing, who knows how to do their job, who knows how to handle their children, who knows how to deal with their relationship, who knows how to run their business, who knows how to deal with people. Okay? So that makes a massive, massive difference. Competence. Now, competence basically means the degree of skill and ability that you have to handle a particular situation. So it's skill and ability. Now, there are 3 ingredients to keep in mind on this aspect of competence, and this is very important. So let's get rid of Mr. Uncertain here. And the 3 ingredients are learn, practice, and experience. Now, I know this isn't deep just yet. We're not going into the mind just yet, but we will. But it's important. If you want to become competent in raising children, right? You want to be a competent mother. You want to know how to do the job, and you want to do it well. Well, you might need to learn. You might do a course on how to handle kids. Practice it. Practice on maybe, I don't know, maybe go and do some time in a creche or something and get experience. Hang around with somebody who is a successful mother who knows how to handle their children. Their kids are doing really, really well. They're healthy. They're successful. Get some tips off that person and kind of follow in their tracks. Now, there's one little... These two I don't want to kind of get into, because the basic message here on practice and experience is to get experience under somebody who is already competent. Not somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing, or somebody who has just read a book on the subject. Somebody who is actually successful. Now, on this learn thing, a lot of people, when they finish school and college, they feel, okay, you know what, I don't want to have anything more to do with learning because college and school was such a nightmare. Now, I discovered a very, very important thing, and it's at the very beginning of this book. It's in the section Important Note. It's at the beginning of every single book that this gentleman wrote. And here we go. And this is from the Important Note, which is included at the very beginning of the book, Important Note. Okay? In reading this book, be very certain you never go past a word you do not fully understand. That's it. So when you are studying any subject, make sure that you don't pass by words you don't understand. Because if you do, what's going to happen is your mind is going to start wandering. You'll lose interest. You'll start to get tired. You'll fall asleep while you're studying. Whereas if you make sure that you understand all your words as you're going along, the whole thing is going to come together and you're going to be able to use it. So if you want to become a nurse, or if you want to become a mechanic, or if you want to become a businessman, or somebody who is learning about cryptocurrency, you can do that. And the key thing is, don't pass by words you don't understand. Make sure that when you come to a word you don't get, clear it up. So that's the second little tip. And you will find that when you apply these, your level of self-esteem is going to come up and up and up. Now, so that's the second thing. Now we're going to go into the major thing. I wanted to mention those 2 factors at the beginning because they are important factors. They are important factors that you need to address in life when it comes to self-esteem. This is the key one. This is the key thing. Now, so let me just draw this out. This is the key one. Thought. how you think, what you think about yourself, your ideas about yourself. This is the very start of whether a person has self-respect, self-esteem, or a lack of self-respect and self-esteem. Because that thought is number one. You decide, you know what? I think I would like to get an ice cream cone. I'd love an ice cream cone. That's the thought. I want an ice cream cone. The next thing that leads to is an emotion. So, before emotion, whether that's enthusiasm or anger or excitement or nervousness or fear or unhappiness, before that emotion came a thought. So, I want an ice cream cone. Emotion is, maybe the next emotion that comes in is interest. Maybe you start to feel interested and, got to find the ice cream truck. And then the next thing that comes from that is effort or action. So the action that you do in your life, whether it's to do with going out and asking a girl out, or going for a new job, or interacting with others, or communicating with your neighbour, or dealing with a problem with your husband or your partner or your children. The action depends on the emotion. So emotionally, how are you approaching it? But even before that, you have this thing called a thought. Yeah, it's quite simple. Now, this thought that you have usually is, I can or I can't. Right? So when you're faced with, let's say, a relationship issue, right? You can have the idea, you know what, I can do this. Or you can have the idea, look, I don't know how to approach this, but I can learn how to do it. I can handle this. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I can learn what to do. So that still falls under this bracket of I can. Whereas this other one is I can't. I don't know. I'm not really sure if I can do it or not. Maybe I don't know. I'm not really sure. Maybe I'll leave it until next week, next month, next year. What's on television? Maybe I'll just sit down and watch television for another 6 hours. What they're doing on TV is much more important than my life. Anyway, so the thought is vital. If your thoughts are clear, if you're thinking clearly, your concept of your self-esteem is going to be up in this bracket here, much, much higher. Now, if that sounds perfect, that sounds great. All we got to do is, think positively, and that sounds great. But why is it that you constantly doubt yourself? You kind of go, I don't really know, I'm not sure, maybe I'm not good enough, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm just too sad, I couldn't be bothered, I'm worried what they're going to think about me, if I say it and it's the wrong thing, then what's going to happen? So this is vital. Now, where does thought come from? Because this is the central thing on self-esteem. So let me just draw this to you. And I'm going to, first of all, explain to you how you come up with these ideas. So there you are in life, and we are all trying to survive. We're all trying to do better for our families and friends. So we're all trying to survive in some way, okay? And every day you're taking in information about all sorts of things. You're learning. And that information is getting stored in a record, day by day, minute by minute, second by second. And these we call pictures. Okay? Pictures. So you store information in picture form. For example, what I'd like you to do now you don't have to write this on the chat or anything, is just close your eyes and think of a cat. Okay, open your eyes. So, what you looked at there was simply a picture. And that is a recording in what we call the mind. And that's, without getting into too many complexities, the basic meaning of the mind. It's a collection of pictures from your past. It's not just like a photo album. It's got all sorts of information in it. But you store all this information. Now, when you have a problem in life, let's say you want to ask a girl out, or you want to, in work, you want to put yourself forward for the promotion. So there is your problem. Now, you look at the information here, and then you compare it to this information that you've already learned. So for example, if you find out that to get a promotion, you have to be able to use Microsoft Word, and you have to be very good on that. But you know what? Back here, you have a memory of you learned Microsoft Word. So you think, oh, you know what? I can do that. Or if you don't, if you have a blank, you never learn Microsoft Word, you can still come up with, you know what? I could learn that easily. So you take in information, you compare it to what you've already learned, and then you come up with your conclusion. And this will determine whether you have self-esteem in that area. You come up with your conclusion or your thought. And that will lead to an emotion, and then that will lead to action. Now, so, again, that sounds wonderful, Vincent. Wonderful. Sure, I knew that anyway. Great. So, where's the problem then? Why is it that you think negatively? Even though you've got nobody putting you down in your life, you're actually very good at your job, you know how to handle lots of stuff, but yet you still have these negative thoughts about yourself. You think you're not good enough. You think you should have done something different. Bad at making decisions. Can't make up my mind. Where are these thoughts coming from? So, they are coming from a hidden influence. They are coming from something that is affecting your thinking. It's affecting this mind without your consent. And I'm going to go over this in a moment. So now, what I'm going to go over right now is the two key ingredients that cause you to have uncontrolled thoughts about yourself. Two things. Okay? So now let's get rid of all this positivity for a minute. Now we're going to just dive down into the bowels of hell for a minute. Okay? Maybe not that extreme, but... Okay. So anyway, normal information is going in here. So there are two things that are responsible for why you have a lack of self-esteem. And that is recordings of two things. Okay? Recordings of two things. Let me just get this up 1 second. And okay. Just going to send a kind of communication here. Okay. So there are two things. Now, these two things are, number one, physical pain. So, what's in here, in this separate storage compartment? Physical pain. Now, when I say physical pain, I mean the time that you had that car crash. I mean the time you had surgery. I mean the time you fell out of the tree. Okay? The time you went head over heels on your bicycle. The time somebody dropped a cement block on your foot. The time you cut your hand in the door. The time you burned your hand on the cooker. That's physical pain. Now, when intense physical pain comes in, this part of the mind switches off. Just like the fuse box in a house will protect the house from an overload of electricity. This part of the mind switches off, and everything from this incident gets recorded in a little separate compartment of the mind, which I'm going to explain to you now in a minute. So that's the first thing, is physical pain. And that stores separately. I'm going to show you in a minute how this affects you and your self-esteem. The second thing that goes in here is emotional pain. And specifically, loss. So this is the second major ingredient of this compartment. Emotional pain. Now, when I'm talking about loss, I'm talking about the death of a family member. I'm talking about the loss of a partner. I'm talking about the loss of a pet. The loss of a job that you loved. The loss of a business. Maybe you had to leave your country and that was a massive loss for you. These losses contain a lot of emotional pain, and that's the second thing that gets stored here in this separate compartment. Now, the name of this separate compartment in Dianetics is called the reactive mind. Now, the word reactive means push button, which means that if something happens out here, similar to what happened here, the reactive mind triggers and starts affecting your thinking. And after it starts affecting your thinking, it then starts affecting your emotion and then your action. But the first place it affects is your thinking. So that's the first thing that happens, is reactive mind kicks in and it reacts. So something external, I'm going to give you an example of this in a minute. Something external triggers off something buried, and it starts affecting your thinking. So we've got two examples here, okay, that I prepared for you. So let's say, isn't maybe the interest part of thought? Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, obviously. Well, actually, Walter, interest is basically more of an emotion than anything else. It's a very high emotion, but before that there's the thought. The thought is a very, very light thing. Okay? Interest is next, and then action. Okay, so the basic cause of lack of self-esteem is different for each person. Why? Because each person has got different content in this baggage compartment, which we call the reactive mind. And it's reactive because all it takes is for something to happen to you in present time to trigger off something from the past which affects your thinking without you realizing it. So let me just give you two little examples. Number one, let's say as a child, let's say as a kid you were 8 or 9 and you decided to join a boxing club. Okay? Now in the first 3 fights you were beaten really hard. You know, you were unconscious, there was a lot of physical pain, and each of those, let's say 3 fights, gave you 3 big ones of these, buried. Even when you're unconscious, this reactive mind is still recording what's going on. It's recording the sounds, the sound of the punch, the sound of the words that are spoken to you when you're being punched, the feeling of the ground, the temperature, the blood in your mouth. All that stuff is getting recorded in here in the reactive mind. Now, so what's that got to do with self-esteem, Vincent? Please, get to the point. I will. What that has to do with is this. If that kid has had those 3 incidents when he was 8 years old and he didn't do any boxing since, 20 years later, if that's not been addressed, what can happen is every time this guy in the future meets, let's say, a bully or somebody who's very aggressive, His reactive mind tells him, stay away. Stay away. Why? Because the reactive mind doesn't think. It just reacts. It doesn't think clearly. So there's a part of your mind that only reacts. It doesn't think like you do. It just reacts. So the reactive mind tells this guy to stay away from this employee. Why? Because it thinks it's the same. It thinks that this new employee who is aggressive is the bully that beat him up, or the guy who beat him in the boxing. It doesn't see a difference between present time and the past. So the present thing triggers off the past. The reactive mind gives the guy the feeling, listen, stay away. And the guy has an impulse to move away. He wants to get away from that person. And then he tells himself, oh, I want to get away because you know what? I'm not good at confrontation. I'm very shy, or I'm nervous. He has to come up with something. He hasn't an absolute clue why he's really moving away. The basic reason is because there's something beneath the surface affecting him without him even realizing it. So he has to come up with something. And the thing that he comes up with is, oh, you know what? I'm no good at this. I'm no good at this arguing thing. I'm too stressed. And then starts worrying. Because he doesn't know what's happening. His reactive mind is pulling him away from what it thinks is pain. Whereas this situation may have just needed a conversation. A bit of two-way conversation. That's all it would have needed. But the reactive mind tells him, get out of that situation. Now, next situation is this. Let's say in one of those incidents, when the guy was beaten, somebody said to him, I wrote down a nice little comment here, will I grab it? Okay, somebody said to him, you are worthless. Okay? So this happened to him when he was 8 or 9 years of age. Somebody beat him and told him he was worthless. Now those words, you are worthless, got stored in this reactive mind. So, the first thing the reactive mind does is it tells the guy, stay away. If he doesn't, the reactive mind is going to start bringing in those words. Here's a few words to remind you of what happened. And the guy starts thinking he's worthless. Now this might seem a little bit unreal, because this is just an example, and it might not be the case for you. Because as I said, this is different for each individual. Each person has their own different things that happened to them in their past and different things that were said. So to summarize this point, the basic and underlying reason for lack of self-esteem has to do with this reactive mind steering you away from what it thinks is pain, whereas it might not be pain. And also the words that were spoken to you during moments of injury from your past. That sounds a bit bizarre. Next example. And by the way, in a moment I'm going to pause and take a quick drink. I'm going to ask you for an example. So if you have any example that you can think of where you've seen yourself reacting and doing something that you didn't really understand and it affected your self-esteem, I'll ask you for that an example in a minute. Okay, so now let's say here we have, let me just get a bit of space here. Okay. Okay, so let's say this guy, he has a memory of his wife, and she left him, and that was years ago. That was like 5 years ago. They were together for 15 years, and it was a major, major loss for him to lose his wife. She left him and went away to, I don't know, the Arctic Circle to live with polar bears or whatever it was. But he loved her, and it was a massive, massive loss for him. Now, while she was leaving, she added in a couple of comments. And one of the comments was, "You are good for nothing." Okay? You're good for nothing. Now, those words get stored in here, in this reactive mind beneath the surface. So the guy moves on with his life. He eventually apparently gets over the breakup, and he's now in a new relationship. And yeah, things are going fine. Things are going great. And then at their first argument, okay, the reactive mind goes, "Oh ho, here we go again. Here we go again." Same situation. Now it's not. It's not the same situation. But the reactive mind can't tell the difference between the present and the past. And so it starts giving this fella, reminding him that, you know what, there's pain here, so get away. So he starts to doubt himself. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have got involved in this relationship. Maybe I'm not the right one, you know. And also these words can start kicking in. These words can start affecting the way he's thinking, and he starts thinking, I'm not good enough for her. I'm just not good enough for her. And she's like, what are you talking about? Don't be saying those ridiculous things. And he said, no, I'm not good enough. Well, where is it coming from? It's coming from baggage. It's coming from his baggage. The pain from his past. Now that might seem a little bit hard to, accept, but this is the key thing. And the reason it's key is because when the person starts clearing up this stuff, they really get permanent relief from it. So, I'm going to break there for a moment. What I'd like to do is ask you for an example. So, I'd like you to think of an example when you reacted, just like this guy's reacting. Oh, I'm not good enough for you. I'm going to go and live in the mountains. And she's like, what's wrong with you? There's nothing wrong with you. Oh, no, I'm not good enough. So, give me an example of a time that you reacted and you kind of did something maybe that you shouldn't have done, and it affected your self-esteem. So give me an example of something of sometime you reacted, you did something that perhaps you shouldn't have done, and how it affected your self-esteem. And then we're going to go into the solution. Okay? And you can, if you're on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, you can pop them into the comments. If you're on Zoom, just pop them in here on the chat. So I'm just looking for an example of a time when you reacted, you did something that you went, oh no, why did I do that? Why did I do that? And it affected your self-esteem. And then we're going to go into how to fix it all. Okay, let's see what we have. Yeah, Walter says reactive mind can act upon one's integrity, which is similar to self-esteem. Yeah, that's true. That could happen. Okay, so if anybody has any examples, pop them in there. If you don't want to put one in, don't worry about it. Okay. But if you do, and I move on, don't worry, I'll come back and check. So I'm looking for an example of a time when you reacted, you did something that you felt, oh no, I shouldn't have done this, and then it affected your self-esteem. So you can relate your example, moving on from a relationship without trying to resolve issues. Yeah, thank you, Sonia, for that. When a person has had past losses in relationships, it definitely can affect their self-esteem in new relationships. We know that. And now we're going to go into how to handle it. How you actually handle it. Now remember, the first couple of points I went over was suppression. You can have a conversation with somebody who's putting you down and how to sort it out. Number 2, you can learn about things. You can become good at things, and that will improve your self-esteem. Now, but the biggest problem is this reactive thinking, this reactive mind that you have, and that everybody has. So, As I mentioned at the beginning, this is based on this book, and in book 3 of this book, in chapter 5, book 3, is the exact sequence of steps that you take to handle it, but I'm just going to briefly outline it for you. In Dianetics, we have this procedure called auditing. The word auditing just means to listen and to guide. It doesn't mean life coaching. It doesn't mean telling the person what to think. It doesn't mean a pat on the back. It means listening and guiding. So you have two people. Auditing is done with two people. You have an auditor, and an auditor is somebody who listens. Okay? Auditor is somebody who listens. Word audire comes from to listen. Latin. Now the next one, the person who's being helped is called a pre-clear. So in a Dianetic session, you've got two people. One with their eyes wide open, which is the auditor, and the pre-clear wide awake, but their eyes closed. Pre means before, and clear basically is the end goal of Dianetics, which is somebody who has cleared up the reactive mind and is basically back to themselves again. It doesn't mean they're somebody different or they're superhuman or now they know everything about everything. It just means they are back to themselves again. They're able to think clearly. The auditor is helping the pre-clear to return to things that have happened in the past. These painful moments. He's helping the pre-clear to return to things that have happened in the past. Okay? And helping him to get rid of the pain using the exact 10-step procedure of Dianetics. Now, so for example, if you have lost a relationship, you lost somebody close to you, what would happen in a Dianetic session is the auditor would get you to close your eyes and return to that incident and use the techniques of Dianetics to get you to go over it and over it in a very exact way and be communicating it to the auditor. Dianetics is based on the most traditional method of people helping people, which is communication. This basic therapy technique or whatever has been with us from the very, very beginning, and these procedures are based on communication. Like when you go to a friend and you have a problem, you feel better when it's off your chest. That's the basic, that's the bedrock of this. But it's not just idle chatter and about anything. It's very specifically done. So when you've handled one incident, you go on and you handle the next one. And you handle the next one. And all you're doing is you're getting rid of the pain and you're getting rid of the stress. Now, it can be tough. A session can be tough sometimes, but you bring the person through it. At the end of it, the person has gone through it and is out the other side feeling better. If something doesn't clear up, it means that there's an earlier one connected to it, or an earlier one. So what you want to do is you want to get down to the basic. And that's the basic procedure. Now, it does take a while. This isn't solved in 5 minutes, but the results that you get are stable. And as I said, it's unique for you. It's not just, I can't just tell you, for everybody it's the same thing. It isn't. Yes, the procedure is the same, but the reasons why a person has a lack of self-esteem are different for each person, based on what was said to you during moments of pain and what happened to you. Okay, that is the basic procedure. Dianetics is not something that you do forever. You do it until you get clear, until you've cleared it up. And then you can get on with your life. You can start to actually be honest with yourself about your true ability, which is very positive. Okay, so now you can chew on that for a minute. I'm just going to go back and check the comments here before we summarize this and wrap it up. Okay, Otis, trying to accept your past while heading towards the future, not letting go, whether it is due to how far things have become, the history journey. So, yeah, that's a good point. Like if you're carrying all this stuff with you, it's very difficult to try and constantly give yourself that pat on the back and, come on, because you're like carrying a heavy load with you. It's time to loosen the load. That's basically the message. Let's see. Collaborator wasn't working full time. Take a smoke cigarette and I went to smoke one instead to continue what I was doing. Show a good example is too. I didn't have any urgency or need to. It was reactive mind kicked in. I went to smoke one. Oh, I see. Okay, got it. So somebody else is doing something and then automatically you got triggered to do the same thing. Okay, thank you very much, Walter. If I think somebody is judging me negatively, I react. Yeah, good, Dermot. That's a really good example because you know what? You're going to run into that when you try to achieve your goals in life. If somebody's judging you negatively, you should be able to go, okay, fine, you've got your opinion. You judge me negatively. You can say what you want. It's not going to affect me. I'm still going to do what I'm doing. I still have my opinions of myself. I still don't think I'm a bad person. I think that I'm a good person with good goals. So that's kind of the logical approach to it. But instead what happens is this stuff kicks in and you just lose control of your thoughts. You go, oh no, you know what? I won't bother. I won't bother at all. Okay, next one. Slapped my boyfriend because I felt dismissed on my birthday when he actually was preparing a surprise but was doing his things and meeting his friend during the day. I was with him the entire day. I didn't see it coming. It happened before. I've been bullied. But interesting. Good example, Amiva. Thank you so much for that. Very good example, actually, and a very clear relationship to how the past can start kicking in, affecting you, and you start reacting, and it's illogical. Good. Kick back and judge. Okay, Dermot, thank you very much. Fine. Okay. Have you come across a time where you're supposed to be in your prime but felt something wasn't quite right or fit the pieces, wondering if anything and everything in the world makes any sense? Yeah. Does anything I say or feel have any purpose? Yeah. Okay, good. So a person, again, is having these thoughts about, oh, where am I going in my life? And am I going to make it at all? Yeah, showing them the rest of perfect. Good. Dermot, the only thing about it is that when you are faced with suppression, there is this attack mode. People do want to defend themselves, and that's fine. It's a kind of an urge for you to do it. But sometimes you can start a little game going with the person. You know, they criticize you, then you criticize them. Now that they've been criticized, they're going to criticize you again. Now that you've been criticized, you criticize them. So it can get into a little bit of a game on it. There are things that you can learn about it, but the key thing is to clear up your own baggage that's getting pushed, the buttons that are getting pushed. Okay? Okay, Tricia, some people thrive on negativity or change it into a positive. They have never a comeback. That's wonderful. Wonderful, Tricia. You've obviously learned how to handle people better that give you that type of stuff, and that's particularly fine. The trouble is that, you know, a person still clears up this baggage, and once you meet the next person who criticizes you, it can still press those buttons. So it's good to have a technique to handle it. That is very good. Nothing wrong with that. But it's vital to clear up the baggage so that people like this can't press those buttons too easily. Okay? So thank you very much. Tricia, I feel I don't choose, I'm chosen, which makes me feel the other person's in control. I need to comply in order to hold on to them, which actually is the opposite. You don't choose. Okay. Right. Okay, Barbara. So then the concept here is that you're not actually choosing what you want, and other people are actually starting to control your life for you. Well, the actual ideal situation is that you know what you want to do. If somebody's on the same page, perfect. If they're not, okay. You know what you want to do in your life, and you're able to make the decisions. And you're the one making the decisions. Even if you work for somebody, and they tell you, listen, you need to clean the floor. You can decide, okay, I'm in a job, the floor needs cleaning, I'll clean the floor. You can decide even working as part of a team. So, but it's a good point. With this baggage, it can constantly cause you to doubt yourself and your opinions and your choices. How do you know that you're clear then? My example has been only twice in my life. Yeah, the amount of, Amiva, to answer that question, again, it's a personal thing. It depends on the person. It takes different lengths of time for different people. You know it when you know it. That's basically it. When you read the book, you'll find out. Brings nothing to my table. Okay, Barbara, thank you. And what triggered is not that clear. And what triggered is not that clear apart from feeling disrespect, dismissed, maybe said it's a bit wide and specific. Yes, Amiva. The thing is that when a person is reacting, they quite often do not know what is being triggered. Why? Because this reactive mind is operating beneath the surface. You know, it's kicking in without you realizing it. It's affecting things without you realizing it. And that becomes more realistic for you when you start to get into some of this. Okay, so we're at 9 o'clock almost. So, okay, Barbara, you were actually cleaning the floor as a punishment from your boss. Okay. Good. All right, Miva. Thank you. Now, so we went over learning to deal with people who put you down, becoming competent, but also clearing the reactive mind. This is the most important part. If you don't clear this, the competence factor and the people putting you down factor become more difficult. Whereas if you do clear this, those things become a lot easier. Okay? So this is basically the problem, and that is the recommended solution for lack of self-esteem. Okay? And that's going to help you to really get to the root of it, so that you don't have to keep defending yourself and you can be yourself. Right. At the beginning, I mentioned that, this is where I'm going to recommend in the next step now. At the beginning, I recommended that I do a 4-part online course, and I do every Friday night from 8 o'clock until 9 o'clock. It's a 4-part online course. It's 1 hour. And what I do on this course is I break down this reactive mind into a couple of chunks to make it easy to understand, and we go over the application part a bit more on the 4th module. And so this will kind of help you to become more aware and more educated on the subject of self-esteem and what you can do to help yourself and to help others. Now, the cost of the 4 modules is in total €20, and it includes a copy of this book. So this book, as soon as you enroll, this book is sent out to you free of charge. There's like 500 pages in it. It contains everything that you need to know for the modules and to be able to apply Dianetics. Okay? So there's a link there that's just gone up for the Mind Explained course. That's the title of it, the Mind Explained. And on this course, at the end of each module, I will give you an exercise to do. And you write them up, the answers to it, and you send them in to me personally. And I will be correcting them to make sure you fully get it. So I would absolutely love for everybody who's on this webinar tonight to be and join me on that course, because it will really, really help you to understand more about what's going on. Okay, folks, so we've come to the end of the webinar. Don't worry about the link right now. You can check that out later on. Okay, because the link is going to stay open there for a few minutes after the webinar is finished. Okay, now what I want to do right now for everybody on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, I want to say thank you so much for your time tonight, for sticking with me, and for your examples. Anybody that gave examples from those platforms. For everybody on Zoom, thank you so much for your time and for being here and for your attention. So thank you to Mary, Anne-Marie, Shane, Sonia, Caroline, Geraldine, Walter, Naran, Chimeg, Otis, Camille, Tricia, Sylvia, Uldis, Amiva, Barbara, and Cynthia. So everybody, thank you so much for your time tonight. Was there any more questions there? Okay, thank you. With your course, can we get cleared? Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the first step, Amiva, is to get education so that you know what to do, you see, because that's the purpose of the modules, and the purpose of the book is to give you the first step, which is a little bit of education, and then you'll know what to do next, and then you'll know how to go about getting some of this stuff cleared up. Okay, folks, so again, thank you all so much for your time tonight. I'll leave you be. The chat is going to stay open there, and you can check out that link. And thank you, Cynthia. Wave back to you, Sonia. Tricia, delighted you liked it. Great. And Caroline, great. Thank you very much, Caroline. And Amiva, yes, I know an auditor. And you can send a message to Igers. He'll give you more data about that. Okay? He's the host on the webinar tonight. Okay, folks, so thanks again. We'll say good night to you. Have a beautiful evening, and I hope to see you all at the online course on Friday night. Okay, bye for now.